Hello, this is Danny Leal. Welcome to this short presentation on the Model View Controller design pattern. In this video, I will talk about what the Model View Controller is and in what context it is used. So, what is an MVC design pattern? MVC stands for Model View Controller. This design pattern is a common architectural pattern that is used to create and design user interfaces, as well as the structure of an application. This pattern divides an application into three parts that are interconnected and depend on each other. Those three parts are the model, the view, and the controller. So broadly, the MVC pattern consists of the model, or data layer. It is the internal representation of the data. The view, or user interface. This represents the data in some form to the user. And lastly, the controller translates the user's actions and inputs and updates to the model. The overall intent of this design pattern is to help keep the user interface separate from the rest of the program. One way to look at the MVC architecture is to think about the interactions that go on in a typical restaurant. A customer typically waits for the waiter to come to them. They order the food from the waiter, who promptly writes the order down and then proceeds to the kitchen to deliver the order to the cook. The waiter does not prepare the food. The cook prepares the customer's food. The cook finally hands over the prepared food to the waiter, and it is the waiter's job to move this food from the kitchen to the customer. This example makes it easier to relate to the three components and how they might function. In the next slide, we will look deeper into the functions of each part of the design pattern. So what are the functions of these three interconnected parts? The model or data layer represents the actual internal structure of the data in the application. It is independent of the user interface and controls the logic and the operations of the application. In other words, the model is the part that does the work. Because the model is interdependent of the user interface, it has the flexibility and is more robust. To go back to our restaurant example from earlier, this component would be the cooks. They take the meal orders from the waiter, the controller, and then begin preparing the meal for the customer, the view. This process is similar to the model taking the data from the controller and then providing the data for the view. The view, or user interface, presents the model's data to the user. Different views present the information of the model in different ways. There can be multiple views that each define an update procedure. Simply put, the view is a visualization of information that the application contains. Going back to a restaurant example, the view would be the customer. The customer places an order and receives the food through the waiter or the controller. The customer has no direct contact with the cook or model. This process is similar to the user requesting certain data and the view displaying it for them however they ask for it. The controller translates user actions and inputs into the application function. It then converts these inputs or actions into commands for the application. The controller acts as an intermediary in that it is the component that enables the interconnection between the views and the model. It talks to the model and view, but does not manipulate them. Lastly, most of the work is done by the controller. Going back to a restaurant example, the waiter takes requests from a customer to the cook and then takes the meal from the cook, the model, back to the customer or view. The waiter is the connection between the customer and the cook. This would be the user requesting to open a link and the controller receiving the user's requests and running the code based on those requests through the models. And finally, responding to the user by rendering the requested view file to display the link. Let's try a quick question. Why do you think that the model should be independent from the view and controller? Please pause the video and try to figure out why this may be the case. I'll give you 10 seconds to try and think about this. Ready? Go. Okay, the reason that the model should be independent from the view and controller is that separating the model from the view makes it easier to add multiple data representations for the same data. Separating the model from the view also reduces the complexity of each part. Some of the advantages of using this design pattern include a clean separation of concerns. This means that the three components have clearly defined responsibilities. Also, since the design pattern has multiple parts, it enables teams to work on separate concerns in parallel. For example, one developer could be working on the view while another works on the model, and lastly, another can finish the controller. Because the MVC pattern is so well organized, MVC applications tend to be easier to maintain. Lastly, the MVC pattern encourages low coupling and high cohesion. Low coupling means that the code in different areas is independent of the code in other areas. High cohesion means that related code can be placed together. Although MVC is a very widely used design pattern, it does have some shortcomings. First, since the emphasis is on data, instead of asking an object to do something with its data, the view asks for the data and then displays it, which can also contribute to inefficiency. Tight coupling is also an area of concern since both the view and controller are tightly coupled to the model's public interface. And lastly, MVC can't be suitable for small applications. This creates an adverse effect in the application's performance and design. To wrap up the presentation, MVC architecture is a well-known and mostly used architecture in web and mobile applications. It separates an application into three main logical components: the model, the view, and the controller. Each of these components is built to handle specific development aspects of an application. In our example earlier, we showed how each component functions and works. We also saw that the model only represents data and nothing else, and how the model does not depend on the controller or the view. So I hope you enjoyed the short presentation. Thank you for watching.